Escape to Gaming. Today I'm here to talk about my top favorite 10 driving games of this current generation, and I'm also going to go over 10 of my favorites from the PlayStation 1 and 2 days. So I'm going to take this rant inside where it's a little bit cooler and go over them. This ought to be a fun segment. I hope you guys are enjoying your summer. We've had a really hot one here in Northern California, and it's just been really a scorcher. Really tough when you have to work all day in it. But it's nice to come home and get in that air conditioning. I hope you guys have been enjoying your games and catching up on games this summer. I just did a whole little segment on the summer gaming and some of the pickups that I've already gotten. And I got to thinking, about games of the old days and games of today that I like in terms of driving games or racing games. Now, there's many kind of crossover genres. I'm not going to really include like the car combat, like Road Rash, Twisted Metal, Roadkill, games like those are great. You can almost do a whole segment just on those, even though there's not a lot of those. I really enjoy those type, but I want to just focus on racing games that really have meant a lot to me over the years. I'm going to start initially with the top 10 PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 games that I like, and some of these were multi-platform on the Sega Genesis or even on the Panasonic 3DO, a few of them. So I'm going to start with the first ones and go down the list. Now, they aren't in any particular order, and if I leave out any, I have to apologize now, because I know there's just so many great ones. I mean, there's off-the-wall ones for the PlayStation 1, like Burning Road, which was kind of unusual, and just many strange kind of hardcore 4x4 for the PlayStation 1 also. It's kind of an interesting one, but these are, I'm going to just focus on my personal favorites. Some of these are kind of hard to whittle down to just 10. But I'm going to start off with the PlayStation 1 and 2 games, and then I'm going to wrap up with the current gen games for the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3. So here they are. So the first one on my list is Driver 1. Now, I like Driver 1 and 2. 2 actually had some improvements, but the first one was so cool. It was really like the first GTA-style game, even before there was really a Grand Theft Auto 3. And it was really neat how you could drive anywhere in an open world, pretty much. You just had to be careful. The mechanics weren't bad for back then. Actually, the driving was fun. The cop chases were just relentless. You really had to learn how to weave through traffic and try to evade the cops. But that first driver game, being open world and being in different environments, Miami and a few other cities, in Chicago, they had some other cities. I mean, Chicago, I think, was in Driver 2, but just a wonderful game. Oh, they had San Francisco, that's right. I love that, man. I remember I was at my mother-in-law's staying for a while. We had a really bad car accident, and I had to stay at my mother-in-law's for 5 months. I was in a head-on collision. It was really bad, and thank God for Driver 1. That's pretty much all I played. That and a couple of my older PlayStation 1 games at the time. And she had a little 19-inch TV in there, and I just plugged my PS1 in there and just had a ball. And I had fractured ribs and a jacked up neck, and fractures in my skull and everything. So it took me a long time to recover, and frankly, that PlayStation 1 console and Driver 1 in particular really got me through. It's kind of the last thing I need to be playing after having surviving a head-on collision. The other person was drunk and actually died in the accident. And so Driver 1 has a special place in my heart because it got me through some really tough times, a tremendous amount of pain, and it was just great escapism. So going down the list, Test Drive 1, the very first Test Drive also. In fact, I played that also when I was laid up and really enjoyed it. They had a 69 Corvette, a big block Corvette, and they had a Chevelle. And it's kind of the first one racing game that had muscle cars from the old days. And it was tricky. You really had to kind of memorize the tracks and the traffic patterns, but it was a lot of fun. I really loved the Test Drive series, and I had played it actually way back on the Commodore 64 as well. Next on the list is the Gran Turismo 1. Now, Gran Turismo 1 and 2 are both really good. The first one, though, just had incredible detail, the way you could set the cars up and adjust the suspensions, and the realism at the time looked really good. I was really impressed on the PlayStation 1 how good that very first Gran Turismo was. It really, I put a tremendous amount of time. It almost was kind of the Forza, how I view Forza 4 today, back on the PlayStation 1 console. A lot of fun on that one. Now, the very first Need for Speed game actually came out, I think, a year or two earlier on the Panasonic 3DO, was the very first Need for Speed. I remember they had a Corvette was my favorite car that I drove at the time. I think they had a dash view and a couple other car views behind the car or over the hood or what have you. But at the time I was spellbound. That was one of probably the 5th or 6th game that I bought. And I had that in the tall box as well for the PlayStation 1. Was the very first Need for Speed. I put a tremendous amount of time in that. My wife liked that one very much as well. We had a lot of fun with that, mastering all the tracks. Again, you kind of memorize where the cars were and the patterns and what have you. But it was really a tremendous amount of fun. Just kind of having that dash view, you really felt for the first time like you were inside the car. So that game was kind of a revolutionary game for me personally at the time. Rallycross was another one for the PlayStation 1. Just a fun little game, and I love the little animations of the mud, the way the mud would fly off the tires and get all sideways and bouncing off the turns and launching over the jumps. And because the road was so irregular and kind of off camber and what have you, the cars were really unpredictable. So it was kind of hard to memorize a pattern like you would on a paved track. But it was a tremendous amount of fun playing that game. Rallycross. I think they had a second one too, which I also enjoyed. Now kind of getting up into the PlayStation 2 and the Xbox is I had Driver 3. Now I actually just bought Driver 3. I have it down here on the floor, and I bought that last night. It was kind of pricey. I had to pay a lot of money for it, but I found a mint copy of it. It must still be fairly high in demand. It's one of the more expensive games. God, I think I paid like $30 for it, but I got an absolutely flawless copy with the original booklet. Driver 3, in fact, I still have two saves in my memory card for my PlayStation 2 on that. And I had a blast last night playing for hours and going through all the cars. I remember the cities, and I unlocked it. It was Istanbul and Nice, France, and Miami. And it's just wonderful. Huge, giant open world areas. Unfortunately, the mechanics with the shooting and the way the little guy runs around, I think his name is Tanner, is just kind of awkward. Compared, we get so spoiled with Grand Theft Auto and the Grand Theft Auto series, but it really did rival Grand Theft Auto in many ways. The driving is not bad. I was really good with the power slides and evading the cops. And again, the driver game is one of those games, Driver 3 especially, where I'll just go in and not even do the missions so much, but focus on just kind of on the free roam. I think it was called free ride. You can just go in and go anywhere you want, and you can turn the police on or off. It's really cool. And it had great weapons. They had like a rocket launcher. You can just get out of your car with an M16 or rocket launcher, blow things up, kind of like, Vice City or Grand Theft Auto 3. And it was just a lot of fun. My younger nephews would come over and, Uncle Dean, is that Driver 3 around? And they would put that in, and then they'd fight over the controller, blowing up everything in sight and trying to get away from the cops. So I had a lot of fun. That brought back a tremendous amount of memories for me on that one. Forza 1. Oh my God. When I first bought my first Xbox, that was one of the first games that I bought. I think I got Forza 2 also, which I think was on the regular Xbox. But I love Forza 1. I played the living hell out of it over and over and over. I love the authentic look of the cars, the way the light hit them, the track designs. The realism overall was really a notch up, I thought, from the Gran Turismo series, as much as I love that. That used to be kind of my mainstay for racing games, but Forza quickly took that over, and to this day it's one of my favorites. What else? We've got Need for Speed Most Wanted. Now this was a game that I played on the regular Xbox and loved it. I just really loved that game very, very much. The little animated cutscenes, which are kind of almost very realistic but kind of comic book like, were just incredible. I loved that game. The cars were fantastic. The races, the rivals, the way, you work your way up the ladder. It was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that game a lot. And then you could also get that on the Xbox 360, which I had a copy of that. And I gave that, and I think Need for Speed Carbon to a good friend of mine in Canada. He wanted some racing games, and I said, well, you're going to really enjoy these. So I mailed him those. And now they're worth, I think, Need for Speed Most Wanted on the 360 is fairly rare. You can get upwards of $90 for a mint condition of that today. So it's kind of a rare one. The other one, actually for the PlayStation 1 is another one I forgot, was Need for Speed 3 Hot Pursuit. Now, many of us are familiar with the newer Hot Pursuit, but the Need for Speed 3 was really good. It was the first time they had cops and spike strips, and I think you could play as the cops or as the people in the, the Porsches and Corvettes and Lamborghinis, that were trying to evade the cops and racing. But that game I put a tremendous amount of time in. High Stakes came a little later, which I also liked, probably a close second to that one. But anyway, the Need for Speed Hot Pursuit, Need for Speed 3 was really good. I would wrap the whole, the last one, which I have, it should be here today. I ordered it a few days ago on eBay, is Driver Parallel Lines. This is a very unusual, rare game. Many people haven't heard of it, or they've heard of it, but they never played it. Now this is kind of near the, I think it came out in like '06. It's kind of near the end of the console cycle for the regular Xbox and for the PlayStation 2. Now I had it for, I believe, for the regular Xbox, and I think there's actually a Wii version as well, which is really unusual. There's not a lot of reviews on it, but you'll see plenty of gameplay videos on YouTube, and it's fantastic. I think of all of the driver games, that one is my favorite. It's very unusual. It takes place in 1978. Instead of the Tanner fellow that's in the story, you have this guy named, I can't remember his name now, I think it was Ray. No, Ray was the guy that he stays with. But you start off, and you're kind of like a driver for robberies and crimes and what have you, and you get a buddy that lets you stay in his car shop, and you slowly accumulate money. It's kind of like a Gran Turismo, like a Grand Theft Auto 3 or San Andreas. It's got a big open world of New York City as it was in 1978, and there's parts of it that look fairly accurate. The graphics are somewhat dated, but the gameplay was superior to Driver 3. The way the cars handle, Fishtail, the way they did burnouts, a lot of it was actually an improvement mechanic-wise. It had fantastic music. It's one of my favorite games. It probably is, of all of the older generation games, it's my favorite. So I have a PlayStation 2 copy of that coming. It should be here hopefully today. And I'm going to put some serious time into that and show some gameplay videos. Later, there's something that happens in the story. Your main character gets locked up, goes to prison. He comes out in the future, which would have been the present when the game came out in 2006. And now he gets out of prison. Everything looks different. It's the same city, but there's things that have been changed. It's newer. There's newer cars. Even the lighting seems a little bit different the way it's portrayed. And it's fantastic. There's hidden stunts and jumps everywhere. It's wonderful the way you can customize the cars. There's lots of side missions and activities and races and things you can do. I highly recommend Driver Parallel Lines. If you have an older Xbox or PlayStation 2 or maybe even a Wii, I would really look into getting it. It's very, very good. It's surprisingly good. And the music is fantastic, especially during the 70s. I was really impressed with the music selection, and fantastic, very realistic cutscenes as well. So anyway, that's the older games of the racing games that I really love. Now I'm going to get into the new ones for the current gen consoles. So I'll start off with one of my all-time favorites. Many of you like it as well, and that's Burnout Paradise. Now I have these games, I have all of these games. They're up here on the shelf. I have my PlayStation 3 games here, and then at the very end, past Crockett and Tubbs over here, I have all of my racing games. So Burnout Paradise is one of the best games. It's incredibly fluid, very high speed. That one I've beaten all. I've done every race to the hardest level, got all the different driving licenses. I've had a tremendous amount of fun on that game. Got a fairly high achievement score on it. And I can't tell you how much fun it is. The jumps, finding all the billboards to smash through, all the hit. I mean, it's the one I've scoured the area. I've mastered finding every shortcut to beat every one of those races and unlocking the cars. I bought every DLC pack, the Big Surf Island, everything. I love that game. Many of you love it too. The accidents are over the top. The way they show the cars just careening and crashing and tumbling and parts flying off. I mean, it really makes you gnash your teeth when you see the accidents in that one. So I love Burnout Paradise, as many of you do as well. The next one that is a really good game made by Rockstar is Midnight Club Los Angeles. It's one of, frankly, I think the best game that shows an in-cockpit view. I've had a more fun time, and I felt more comfortable in that view than probably any other in-car view of any other racing game. I love Midnight Club. You can do races on the freeways, races throughout the city. It has a full day-night cycle, and they really they compress Los Angeles. I have the complete edition where they added the South Central area and freeways underneath it, which is awesome. You can pick the game up dirt cheap too. But the graphics are fantastic. The driving is insane. The cops are relentless. I've had some really long, 20+ minute police chases. You just can't shake the cops. It's really cool. And driving through, and I lived in LA for years, and driving through parts of the LA freeway, they've really captured, almost photographically, parts of Sunset Boulevard, portions of the Hollywood Hills, the Santa Monica 10 freeway. It looks incredible. The way the carpool lanes, even some of the clover leaves are perfectly portrayed. It's amazing to me. Parts of Santa Monica too, it's fantastic. The downtown area, the canals, everything. So I've had a tremendous amount of fun. That's one of my go-to racing games is Midnight Club Los Angeles. I have all the DLC stuff for that as well. I have a lot of fun with that one. Next I would say is MotorStorm Pacific Rim. Now this is a PlayStation 3 game. I never played too much of the first one. My brother-in-law, when he first got the PS3, I think it came with the first MotorStorm, and I liked that, but I didn't really care for having to drive through the ruts of the the cars in front of you. If you're on a bike in particular, you had to really master driving through the tire tracks to keep your speed up and all that. But Pacific Rift, they kind of changed the mechanics. It was just the racing was faster, it was more wide open, the areas, and the jumps were insane. It really they really captured this incredible jumps with these high, kind of a Hawaiian style, being on Kauai, with these huge cliffs and incredible air you get. It had a couple really cool views. It's got some good music in it, but the graphics are fantastic. It really gets your heart pumping and your head racing when you play that game. It's kind of one of my favorite go-to games on the PlayStation 3. I love that one very much. Is MotorStorm Pacific Rift. I've had a tremendous amount of fun for that. What else do we have? We've got Driver San Francisco. Now, Driver San Francisco is kind of a mixed bag for me. I love the attention to detail with the cars. They took every famous car chase movie from Vanishing Point with a Challenger, and Bullet with the Mustang and the Charger. The Blues Brothers, they've got the '74 Dodge Monaco, which I actually had in real life. I had one that it was black and white with the push bars and the spotlight and the whip antenna, and then I painted it navy blue, kind of like an undercover car. I drove that car for years. One of my favorite cars had a 440 Magnum under the hood. And I love all my friends. We used to skateboard. Hey, is a Bluesmobile here? And we'd all pile into it. And we'd go out skating, find swimming pools and ramps to skate and what have you. Had a lot of fun with that. But that's one of the things I loved about Driver San Francisco is they had a lot of oddball cars. They even had the Starsky and Hutch '74 Gran Torino, which I really loved as well. So it's just neat that you can see these cars, and then you can put together your own little replays and kind of with car chases, which is fantastic. They have a lot of contemporary cars, Lincoln Town cars and Cadillac Escalades and semi trucks. They have the A-Team van, even the old GMC Enduro van, which is really cool as well. So I like the game as far as like just a free roam and gameplay, but I frankly didn't like the story. It deviated very far from the original Driver series and stories, and the shift mechanic, even though it worked very fluidly. And it's interesting, I didn't like having to rely on the missions to where you're racing and it's kind of cheating, and you shift to a car that's up ahead and then keep shifting back and forth and ramming cars. And it was just kind of strange for me. I thought it deviated too far from the series, so it's kind of a love-hate relationship, but I really do love the cars and the driving and how fast you can drive and the jumps, the air you can get, and how sideways, and all these classic old TV show cars and famous movie chase cars, which is really neat. So Driver San Francisco is a fun one. It's kind of a go-to game just for if I want to play it for an hour or so. That's one that I usually play. Now there's many Need for Speed games. It's morphed many times into all different types of racing, with a Hot Pursuit and what have you, and the Most Wanted series. But one of the ones that I really like is this Need for Speed Shift 2. Now, I like Shift 1 as well. Shift 2 is my favorite. It's very realistic, very similar to Forza, but you can even hear the gussets in the roll cage with the welded to the roof and the sides of the car. You can hear them creaking going around the corners. Little chunks of rubber come off the tires as you're exiting the turns and what have you. They really went for realism. They even have a helmet cam as you turning your head into the turns. That your helmet turns as well. It's got great replays, wonderful different views from over the hood, the nose, from inside the car, through the helmet. Like I said before, it's fantastic. It's, again, one of my go-to racing games. It has really intense racing. You really feel like you're in a race car. I like the customization you can do with the cars as well. It's a fantastic game. I can't recommend Need for Speed Shift 1 and 2 enough. Shift 2 is really an improvement. A lot of the same tracks, more cars, more tracks. Really the best of all worlds. Next would be MotorStorm Apocalypse. Now this is another one that's actually in 1080 on the PlayStation 3. You're almost getting like a PlayStation 4 looking game for the PlayStation 3. I think I've got it, yeah, I've got it up here in my pile of games up there. And I love MotorStorm Apocalypse. It's fantastic. The tracks keep changing. There's all this chaos going on around you with winds and rains and waves and buildings collapsing, and the track actually will change as you're racing around on it. It's a tremendous amount of fun. I really had a lot of fun with MotorStorm Apocalypse. My nephew comes over, and we often will play split screen of that and Pacific Rift MotorStorm. It's a tremendous amount of fun. Now, Forza 4 is one of my favorite games. I mean, I've played it an incredible amount of time. Again, I just like playing with the cars and painting them, tinting the windows, lowering them. They even have I even have a replica of my white Hemi truck, my Dodge Ram. They even have that truck in the game. It's fantastic. When you look behind the dash view, it looks just like being inside my truck. It's fantastic. Of course, the thing handles like crap on some of the raceways and what have you. But it's just nice that they give you a great variety of cars. I even have a tremendous amount of DLC. Old LTD Ford station wagons and Volkswagens and you name it. I mean, it has every type of car imaginable. It's a wonderful game. Incredible realism. Fantastic attention to detail with the cars. The racing. The online racing is superb. It's something that I've got a couple friends of mine been trying to get me to kind of enter into some of these online races with them, and I'm going to have to do that soon. I really would like very much to do some of the racing in Forza 4, especially after all the time I spent kind of dialing in some of my favorite cars and getting them set up. So Forza 4 is one of my top games for the current gen, and I'm very much looking forward to Forza 5. I will get the Xbox One for no other reason just to get Forza 5. Dirt 2 is another one. Now, I recently got the very first Dirt, and I played a little bit of it on my friend's PlayStation 3, years ago when it first came out. In fact, I was waiting for the Dirt 2 to come out, so I went over to my friend and goes, well, if you haven't played, Dirt 1 yet, you ought to try it. It'll kind of wet your whistle for what's coming with Dirt 2. So I remember playing a couple races and really liked the realism in it. Well, Dirt 2 is fantastic. Dirt 3 I like too. I didn't care for the Gymkhana events with the cones and slaloming and doing donuts and what have you, and you can't unlock all the tracks in advance unless you do well in some of those events, so it was very frustrating for me. But I do like the rally events, the off-road rally cars. They kind of brought back the Group B rally cars, which were fantastic. They're actually outlawed now because they're so dangerous in real life. So Dirt 3 I like as well, but Dirt 2 is just a masterpiece. Another go-to game, paved tracks, off-road tracks, incredible jumps, realism, fantastic replays. I love Dirt 2. I put I can't even think, probably 50-something hours into that game easily. Need for Speed The Run. Now, many people have either a love-hate relationship with the game. I personally really like it. I've always loved the concept of the Cannonball Run. I've done it 3 times myself, driven back and forth across the country. In fact, I made it in 38 hours once from Fresno, California to Orlando, Florida, in a 70 SS Nova with a 4-speed, and by myself with no radio, no heater, no air conditioning. It was a really tough challenge, and this game kind of compresses that. Within a few hours you can do the whole cross-country deal, but they captured a good cross-section of America with the avalanches and snow up in the Rocky Mountains, and parts of California look just like the parts of California and the freeways and the roads through Yosemite or leaving the Bay Area. It's fantastic the way that's all captured. Going through Vegas with the sand blowing across the road. There's a tremendous amount of realism in that game. So I love Need for Speed The Run. In fact, it was one of my guilty pleasures, I believe, and I did a segment on a while back. And to wrap up, probably my very favorite racing game of all time, which I did a whole review of this, a long review, is Forza Horizon. I can't rave enough. I'm very excited to see if they make a sequel to it. I would love, especially on the new Xbox One. The Forza 5 is great, but it's very sterile. I mean, you're always on a track. It's kind of like very controlled conditions. I like the Forza Horizon because it's just open. It's like open world. You can go anywhere you want. You can race people, challenge rivals, either online or on the track. And I think it'll lend itself to a next-gen game very, very well. I love Forza Horizon. Again, on that one, I have tons of DLC. I've got a ridiculously high, I think 890, achievement score or whatever on my Xbox achievements. None of my friends have beaten my score on the Forza Horizon. My score is getting up there on Forza 4, but not as high as many of my other friends that play that one online. But those are my racing games of all time. This is a segment I've wanted to do for a while, and I thought I'm going to be bringing more of these segments of my favorite FPS games of the current gen, and my favorite adventure games and things like that. So I'm going to be bringing more of those soon, but I just was very excited. I've been doing a lot of driving lately myself, and that's all that's been on my mind. So you know what? I got to really do my favorite racing games of all time. So let me know in the comments the games that you like, and I'm sure I've missed some of your favorites. I mean, you got Ridge Racer, which kind of defies physics, but some of those games are fun. I've played all of the Ridge Racers. I do enjoy some of those. There's many other incarnations of Test Drive Unlimited and Test Drive Off-Road back on the PlayStation 1. There's many games I'm sure I've missed. Let me know in the comments your favorite racing games, and any ones that I missed, or ones that, because I'm always looking to get old, especially with the older ones. And sometimes someone will remind me, it's like, oh, I forgot all about that one. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed the segment. You guys have a fantastic summer and enjoy those games.